Hello guys, and welcome to our countdown to Christmas. We've got a new series right up to Christmas Eve where we're going to be pitting one Necron unit against the other, talking about why we would bring those units and the advantages and disadvantages of bringing those said units. Now don't forget guys, every single day from the 1st of December to the 24th of December, you've got a chance of getting into our giveaway, which is for this Necron box. So I'll put a link in the top right of the video for you now, because we've already done a video explaining how to actually enter that giveaway. So let's move on to today's video, and we're going to be talking about the Skorpekh destroyers against the Ophydian destroyers. Now of course one of these is an elite unit and one of these is a fast attack unit, so obviously not from the same part of the codex. But if you were to design a list around one of these units, we're going to try to make a decision which of these units we prefer. Now this of course will just be my opinion at the end of the day. You might have a complete different opinion. This is just a bit of fun leading on to Christmas Day. Right, so let's roll the transition for the Skorpekh destroyers versus the Ophydian destroyers. So there are quite a few similarities with these two units. I mean, both models within the units are 30 points per model. You've got the unit size of 3 to 6, and the weapons are actually very similar on top of that. But let's first check out the differences between their actual datasheet stats. Now the Ophydian destroyers, the only stat that they actually beat the Skorpekh destroyers in is the movement. They've got that 10-inch movement, they're much quicker, as you would expect from a fast attack unit. Whereas the Skorpekh destroyers, they've got a better strength of strength 5, they've got a better toughness of toughness 5, and they've also got a better armor save of a 3+ armor save as opposed to a 4+. So much more resilient, much more tough, and the weapons are going to hit much harder with strength 5. And they're also very similar in terms of ability as well. I mean, both of them got the hardwire for destruction abilities, so they're all re-rolling once to hit. But the Ophydian destroyers have got a few more unique abilities to their unit. So first of all, they've got the Hyperphase Reap Blades ability, because one or two models in the unit is going to carry 2 Reap Blades as opposed to the single one. So what that means is if you roll a 6 to hit, you score an additional hit. It would be nice if it was 2 additional hits like the Tesla weapons, but hey, it is what it is. They've then got the Whip Coil Bodies ability, so it's a -1 to hit them in melee. And they've of course got the Tunneling Horrors ability, which is effectively Deep Strike, except they're coming in from underground as opposed from flying out of the sky. So if you were to judge it on who's got the best abilities, I'd definitely give it to the Ophydian destroyers. Now let's move on to damage output. Now both units have identical weapons. You've got 1 or 2 models with the Reap Blades, and the other models have got the Hyperphase Threshers. Now those Reap Blades are strength +2, but don't forget those Skorpekh destroyers start at strength 5, not strength 4. So they've already got a better strength there, strength 7 as opposed to strength 6, with the big weapons. And the same applies in fact to the Hyperphase Threshers. These are strength user, so naturally the Skorpekh destroyers are on strength 5. The Ophydian destroyers strength user is strength 4. So if they were to go up against toughness 5 units, they would slightly struggle. But don't forget guys, the Ophydian destroyers slightly make up for the lack of strength with the Ophydian claws. This is something that the Skorpekh destroyers do not have, so it will be 2 additional attacks per model. Now it is only strength user, so strength 4 again, -1 AP, 1 damage. But hey, if you've got a unit of 6 of them, that's going to be 12 additional attacks. It's not too bad. Now you can buff both of these units with either the Protocol of Hungry Void for the +1 to the strength, maybe you can use a Plasma Sight for the +1 to the strength, or you can use the Disruption Field Stratagem for a +1 to strength because they are core units. But with the Skorpekh destroyers you've got a slight advantage because you only need 1 or 2 of those to get to the strength that you're going to require, whereas the Ophydian destroyers are going to need a lot more of those options to hit the bigger and badder things. So scoring that one, I'd give that one back to the Skorpekh destroyers. Now synergy wise, they're going to kind of have the same sort of synergy, aren't they? I mean, they're both core units, so mine will be done from whether it's an Overlord, whether it's the Silent King, Command Barge. You've got the United in Destruction Aura ability from the Skorpekh Lord or Locust Lord, that's going to work on both of these units again. Chronomancers, Technomancers, yeah, they're all kind of doing the same thing to both units. So let's skip over to what is their overall purpose within game. This is where they slightly differ and come away from each other. Because I think the Skorpekh destroyers, you're basing their game around hitting hard at the biggest and baddest units that your opponent has. Whereas the Ophydian destroyers, they're a little bit more sneaky. They could be using that tunneling in ability. Your opponent isn't going to know where they're going to come from, and your opponent knows you're not as bothered about losing your Ophydian destroyers because they are Glass Hammer, so they're going to hit and then possibly die. But they've also got the added option of maybe getting onto an objective because of that Deep Strike ability. Whereas the Skorpekh destroyers, okay, you could use a Veil of Darkness Relic, don't get me wrong, but they're likely going to be slogging up the board. They're likely going to need a babysitter such as a Chronomancer, maybe a Technomancer, whereas the Ophydian destroyers can kind of do it solo. So let's get on to the advantages for the Skorpekh destroyers to begin. Now these advantages are purely based against the Ophydian destroyers, so it's not against the whole game, just purely against the Ophydian destroyers. So the first one I've got here, they are more resilient of course. Toughness 5 with a 3+ armor save, that's the first advantage. The second is they're hitting harder because they're starting at strength 5, so especially those reap blades at strength 7. You've only got to use the disruption field stratagem to get it to strength 8 and away you go. They've then got the -1 to wound stratagem, which I haven't actually mentioned in this video yet, which is the whirling onslaught stratagem for 1 command point, which is a -1 to wound your guys. That's going to be really useful, especially if you're foot slogging these guys up the board. Now as for disadvantages, they're not as fast. I mean 8 inches is still pretty good, don't get me wrong, but those Ophydians are moving at 10 inches. And finally, they're likely going to need character assistance. A Chronomancer is probably the best one to give them an invulnerable save and a rerollable charge roll I guess. But the Ophydian Destroyers, as mentioned, they don't really need it. Now advantages for the Ophydian Destroyers, kind of already mentioned it, the 10-inch movement, so they're getting up the board if they wanted to, or the deep strike option, which is actually the second advantage. The third advantage is the Ophydian Claws. They've got extra attacks, 2 per model. Then they've got the Reap Blade ability, which I don't think you're going to be remembering in fact, because you need to roll a 6 to hit and then you get an additional hit. A lot of people actually forget that that ability exists for the Ophydian Destroyers. They've got the -1 to hit them in melee with their whip coil bodies, and I put here that they're better for objectives. If you deep striking in, your opponent isn't going to know where these guys are going to come from. And finally, they've got the redeploy stratagem, which is called Borrowing Nightmares, so they can literally go back into strategic reserves and then pop out again. Could be really useful for late game. Now something else I haven't actually mentioned in this video, both of these units are eligible for the Annihilation Legion Army of Renown. And the Ophydian Destroyers are actually really good in that Army of Renown because they've got a stratagem available to them, which is called Hyperphase Impalement, and it goes through any of those rolls that ignore wounds lost, such as Abaddon the Despoiler for example, or even our Catan Shards that can only lose 3 wounds in a given phase. It ignores those kind of rolls, as well as feel no pain save rules. So a really good stratagem for the Army of Renown if you are playing it. Now as for the disadvantages for the Ophydian Destroyers, they're not as resilient. They are Glass Hammer, they've only got toughness 4, they've only got a 4+ armor save. They are going to go down pretty quick, especially without an invuln save. And finally, they just don't punch as hard as the Skorpekh Destroyers do. I mean, you can get them to with all those buffs and bonuses that we spoke about, but that's going to get CP heavy because you need a lot more of them to actually get to strength 8, strength 9. So it's time for me to make a decision on which one of these units I would rather have in a list. This one's tricky because I think the Ophydian Destroyers have got a lot going for them, but they are in the fast attack slots, and this is actually another disadvantage that I've missed here. They're competing in the fast attack slots with the Canoptic Wraiths, which I really like at the moment, and the Canoptic Scarabs, which I really like at the moment. So it's hard to get them into a list, especially in the smaller games. So for that reason, I'm going to be choosing the Skorpekh Destroyers today. So guys, let me know what you would select down in the comments below. Also, don't forget the giveaway. Rules for that will be down below in the video description. Other than that guys, thank you all for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.